Hey there, Stampers. This is Sherry Roth with Stamped Treasures. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I've got a fun project to share with you, a little mini album created from envelopes. So you can recreate this album using any size envelope. You just need to make sure that however many envelopes you're using, that they're all the same. Well, maybe you could do it with different size envelopes. I'm not sure, but I've used all the same envelopes. So I'm going to share a quick flip through and then I'll share where these supplies are from. And I'm going to walk you through in this video the assembly of the album base and then the little booklet inside. So I'm not going to go through this album from start to finish because you can customize your album using whatever supplies you have. All right, so there's this little flap and then there's a pocket here so you can write a little note to the recipient. And then it opens up. This is just using some scrap papers. So this is meant to be used as a mini album or a journaling or a journal. And I've used bits and pieces from a paper pumpkin kit and from my stash. I've got little tags in here that they could turn around and use as gifts or for themselves. There's a little album in here with additional journaling spots, some little tags or little papers. So like I said, it's a great journal, but you could add photos to this as well. I happen to have this notebook with a typewriter on it, so I thought that a piece of that paper would work really well in there. This is just an old playing card that I altered. There's another little tag in here. And then here are some little tags that they could turn around and use, whether it's as they add photos or journaling to their album, or if they want to use them for something else. And then I included a little package with some extra ephemera so they could decorate their pages as well. And then in here, we've got another little journaling spot. All right, so let me share kind of what I've used here, and then I'll share how I put it together. All right, so the bulk of the products, well, I would say most of the products came from the August 2025 Paper Pumpkin Farmhouse Florals kit. So that's where my envelopes came from. The embellishments like the typewriter, some of the cardstock that I've used are card bases that I've cut up. This inside card, which is kind of this little bit here, is like a little mini album within this envelope album. All right, and then some of the embellishments that I've included here. This is from that kit. This little insert is from that Paper Pumpkin kit. This is from that Paper Pumpkin kit. And I just created a little pocket out of it. And then most of the rest of this stuff is just stuff from my stash. So I like to junk journal. So I hit up reuse stores, or locally we have this store called the Hodgepodge Lodge where everything is free and people just bring in whatever they don't want. And a lot of it is, it's very well loved, but sometimes you can find like old ledger paper and old greeting cards, you know, that kind of thing, which is kind of fun to repurpose. That's kind of where my passion lies, is trying to find ways to repurpose things. Right now, some of these things you might recognize. This is a bag from years ago that I had in my stash. So I'm just trying to use up some of the stuff in my stash. This paper, which is such fun paper, years ago I had bought my daughter a leather cover for her planner from Chic Sparrow, which is a small business in the US, and it came wrapped in this paper and I loved it and I've kept it for years, so I was happy to find a use for it. And then a lot of these ephemera pieces, those are from an ephemera pack from Stampin' Up, which I am not sure if it's still current or not. If it is, I will link it in the description below. All right, okay, so let me share how to put this album together. It is super simple. So I've gone ahead and I've inked around the edges using pecan pie ink, so it gave it kind of like a rustic feel. And I've got 3 envelopes that are exactly the same. And what I'm going to do is, okay, I want to make sure I get this right here. I'm going to adhere this one first. So I'm going to adhere this to the back of this. So we've got all of our, actually, let me just make sure we're going this way. Sorry. Okay, so we want to make sure all of our envelope flaps are on the right-hand side, okay? Because this last envelope flap, that's going to be what covers over to create our little flap to close, hold our album closed. All right, and you don't want to just lick the envelope flap because that's not enough adhesive. You need to add extra adhesive. So I'm going to use my green glue, Stampin' Up's green glue. So this is just a multi-purpose glue, and I'm going pretty close to the edge, but not right close to the edge so that it doesn't seep out. You can also use a glue stick, tear and tape, whatever, as long as it's nice, strong adhesive. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to adhere it right here like that. And I'm going to fold it over and make sure that it's lined up nicely. One of the things I love about a liquid glue is you have a few seconds to make sure that that's lined up beautifully. All right, so we've got that. So then we're going to repeat that process on this side. But what I encourage you to do is close. Okay, hang on here. Okay, I want to make sure I explain this right here. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, so we are going to, this is going to go across here. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold this flap over so that it lines up nicely like this, and then flip this over and add adhesive here, because then you know that it's going to line up properly. So you're just going to make sure that you've got it lined up, that that flap folds over nicely. So you can see that I've just flipped everything over. My flap is still on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to add adhesive. Again, going pretty close to the edge, but not right up to the edge. And that helps prevent any seepage. I'm going to fill that in. And then fold this over. I love these decorative flaps. So pretty. And there is your album base. So that's just going to fold over, and then this is going to fold over. Now, if you weren't going to add a lot of bulk, if you were just going to leave it like this and maybe tuck a few little inserts, you wouldn't have to worry too much about creating a little, adding any extra thickness to your flap. But I am going to stuff mine full. I'm going to add a little album within this album and stuff the pockets. So I'm going to give myself about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm lining this score line. Actually, let me fold this over so you can see. I'm lining this score line up with the 1/4 inch flap there. And then I'm going to have to move it so I can tuck this under. So I'm just lining that up, and then I'm going to score on there. So then that's going to allow for that thickness that we're going to end up with in our album. And then I'm just going to fold along that. So now I've got that 1/4 inch thickness to work with. So it seems like a lot right now because we don't have a whole lot in there. And these don't match up, but that doesn't matter because we're going to cover this over. All right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do this. So what I've done is I've cut a piece of coordinating cardstock. So this is the same color as this. This is Secret C. I've embossed it using the exposed brick embossing folder. This piece measures 4 1/4 by 5 5/8. So if you're using a standard size envelope, so a regular sized envelope that you use for a standard size card, then this is the size that would work well with it. And I'm going to create a pocket out of it. So I've used a circle punch just to create a notch. And if I don't want to add adhesive to that side, I always kind of hold on to that side. We're going to add adhesive to the other 3 sides. Okay. And then we'll just position this so that we have a nice even border, the top and the bottom, and on the left. So now we've got a pocket that we can tuck that insert into. All right. Okay. And then I've used one of the card bases. So one of the card bases in this kit actually was just a plain card. It didn't have anything on it. But I loved the cardstock. It was a little heavier and almost has like a recycled feel to it. It's got some flex to it. So I used that card base to cut this oval shape, which is from the Impressions of Bloom dies. So it's this one here. So I die cut that. I've added some ink around the edges, and I'm going to bring in my typewriter, and I'm going to do a bit of stamping. So I am going to share a little bit of this, but I'm not going to assemble the whole thing because I need to show you how to close this album up. Okay, so I've got Darling Duckling and Calypso Coral, which are two colors that are in this kit. And I've got my typewriter here, and I'm just going to kind of position my typewriter where I want it. So right about there, make sure my oval is kind of straight. And then I'm going to take this stamp, which is one of the stamps that came in this kit. And I'm going to ink it up with some Darling Duckling. And I'm just going to create a little bouquet. So we'll stamp it once there. We'll do another one here. And then we're going to ink it up with some coral. We'll do one there, and then I'm going to go stamped off. That'll give me a little variation in color. I'm going to huff on it and stamp it off again. So now I've got a little bouquet coming out of my typewriter. Okay, we're going to bring in some Secret Sea ink, and I've got the little piece of paper that came in the kit to act as the typewriter paper in here. And I'm going to stamp Take a Note. Just with some Secret Sea ink. Or just a note, sorry, not Take a Note. And then we're going to tuck this in. So this has a little slit. So it's possible, I know that this kit is no longer available. However, it's possible that you can still get the refill kit. If it is still available, I will link to where you can find it in the description below. Okay, we're going to use some dimensionals to stick this on. So I tuck that in there. And the refill kit won't include the stamp sets, the stamp sets that were included in this kit. However, they will include all the consumable pieces. So you'll get the envelopes, the card bases, all the ephemera pieces. You'll get all that stuff. So if you wanted to recreate this album, you could easily do that with the refill kit. You just have to pick out a different floral image to stamp. And if you've been stamping for a while, then I'm sure you've got something in your collection that would work. All right. So that's going to go on here like that. And then in that kit, we also had some little die cut flowers. So I'm going to take a piece of this and just kind of tuck it. Let's peel off this top bit, and we're going to tuck it in there. We'll add a little bit of adhesive on here. And then we're going to add that flower on there. Okay, so now we are ready to add it to our album front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to position it where I want it. So I want it about there. Now I'm going to be really generous with my dimensionals. So I can see that my envelope flap goes up to about there. So I am going to add dimensionals no further than that bit. And this is going to be handled quite a bit. So I'm going to be, like I said, pretty generous with my dimensionals. I don't want it to pop off, especially if I'm gifting it to somebody. I can peel off the backing. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this over. And again, just kind of center it. All right, and then we've got our flap. Okay, hang on here. And this will, once it's a little bit more full, it actually opens and closes, and the more you do it. And what I actually like to do is kind of curl it just a little bit. And if you open it, see, once it's more full, it's easier to get in. So I tucked my finger in there so that it would slide in there nicely. All right, so then we'll have an insert in here. You can decorate this as you want. You could decorate this. You can add whatever you want into the pockets. But in this section right here, we're going to add a little bit of like an insert, a journal. So I'm going to set this aside for now. And let me share what I've got here. So I took another one of the card bases, and I folded it in half. I added some pecan pie ink around the edges. I didn't bother decorating this or anything. And then I've got random things in here. So this is a piece of that paper that I said that I had. And I created a little pocket. So we are going to add some adhesive. Actually, we can do that right now. So we'll just add some adhesive up the side. Here and here. So, and in my sample, I had a piece long enough that I actually had an extra narrow flip in, but I didn't have enough of this left. So I'm happy to say I've used all of this up, which feels so good. Okay, and then this is a piece, this was from a notebook that I had that I took apart. It's almost like a watercolor paper. It's really nice paper. This is a bag that we used to carry. Now at this point, I've left this sealed. If you want to add an extra pocket, you can trim off this little bit so that you have an insert. You have a pocket on this side as well as this side. I'm not going to bother with that. I feel like there's enough in here. This is just a piece of grid paper that I had that I cut down to size. And then this was, I found this at our Hodgepodge Lodge. It's just a notepad. It was so pretty. I thought it would be nice to add in here, and the sizing was really good. Okay, so now we need to bind it. So what you want to do is you want to fold all your pieces, make sure that it doesn't stick too far out. You don't want it to stick too far out because remember, it's got to fit into your album. So I've got that. I've got all my pieces trimmed. I've got them all inked around the edges. Now I'm going to bind it. But first we need to bring it in here, and this is where it's going to get bound. So it's going to get bound right in here. All right, so I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to grab the things that I need here. Okay, so I've got my Stampin' Pierce mat. You don't need anything fancy to do this. That's one of the things I love about this type of album. So you're going to take this, you're going to put it right in here. I do like to kind of hold this up like this. You want to make sure that you've got it right in that seam. Let me fold that backwards, and we're going to poke 3 holes. So I'm going to do one about here. And you want to go through all of those layers. One about here. And then one close to the center. Okay, so now we've got our holes punched. Now we need to stitch it, and we're just going to use the linen thread that comes in the kit. I'm going to cover up my glue here, and you can feed this through a needle, but I'm just going to use one of these flossers. So this is just from when my kids had braces. These are floss threaders. So I'm just going to feed this through, fold it in half, and you want to start from the inside and go through the center hole. Make sure you're going through all the layers and pull it through. And then you're going to come up through the top. So this is, it's a little, sometimes it can be a little tricky going through. It's almost easier with a needle, but I didn't want to have to thread a needle on camera. So, and sometimes you'll have to go through layer by layer. Okay, I got that. So we'll pull that through. Okay, and you want to make sure that you have enough to go back through here and then come up through the center. Okay, so now we've come up through the top hole. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go down through the bottom hole. And then back up through the center hole. So this is a really easy book binding technique that you can use. Let's just hope that we can get this through here. And it's causing me some grief here. Like I said, a needle is a little bit easier. There we go. I got it. Okay, and then we're going to pull this up through here. Okay, so now this is what it's going to look like. So you'll have 2 threads plus this one that goes all the way down. So what you want to do is you want to feed one end through, and you want it quite snug, but you don't want to pull it too tight so that it's going to tear your papers. And then you're going to tie a knot. And you can leave these long. You can put little charms on there if you want, or you can trim them off a little shorter. So I'm going to leave those about like that. And now we've got our little notebook or journal insert. And then this will close like that. So that is how you create a little mini album / journal from some envelopes with a little notebook insert in it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you use this idea to recreate something of your own, I would love to see it. If you share it online, make sure that you tag me because I would love to see what you create with it. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.